Hello, it's Hande Begüm Bumin Doyduk. Welcome to Negotiation Techniques, Part 5. In this part, we will be talking about Batna, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In negotiation, Batna refers to the best alternative to a negotiated agreement or the best outcome you can expect if you fail to reach an agreement at the bargaining table with your counterpart. An evaluation of Batna is critical if you are to establish the threshold at which you will reject an offer. Roger Fisher and William Ury introduced into the negotiation lexicon the term Batna, an acronym for best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Negotiations no longer see their role as producing agreements, but rather as making good choices. And if they don't reach an agreement, they don't see that as a failure, as they reject a deal because it fails short of the company's Batna. They have succeeded, not failed. Batna is the only standard which can protect you from both accepting terms that are too unfavorable and from rejecting terms it would be in your interest to accept. In the simplest terms, if the proposed agreement is better than your Batna, then you should accept it. If the agreement is better than your Batna, then you should reopen negotiations. When you are developing Batna, you should develop a list of actions you might possibly take if no agreement is reached, improve some of the more promising ideas and convert them into practical options, select tentatively the one option that seems better. As we have seen in Part 4 in the steps of negotiation, during the preparation stage, you need to test your assumptions and learn about the counterpart's contingency plans or their Batnas. The more you know, the more accurate agreement you can make about the relative strength of your Batna compared to your counterpart's Batna. In exchange, you will also hint at Batnas if they are indeed strong. You want the other side to perceive you have the power to walk away from this agreement if necessary. Assuming you do, bluff are always risky. If you determine you don't trust the other side or find they have been deceitful, there is a good time to get to your Batna. In the bargaining stage, in the agreement stage, bargaining stage, it's the strength of your Batna and the other side's Batna that supports the assertiveness of opening position. The stronger the Batna, the more assertive the reopening position. You may think their opening is ridiculous and they are playing hardball trying to anchor you. Consider whether they simply have a very strong Batna. When they say no in bargaining to your proposal or ideas, reassess the strength of their Batna and whether you can beat their Batna. The Batna is a unilateral option that doesn't depend on the consent of the other party. The more Batnas you have and the more willing and ready you are to execute one, the less likely you will need a Batna. Consider short-term and long-term Batnas. Sometimes you don't have a Batna and must reach an agreement. Be sure to continue working on the long-term Batna for future use. Having well thought about Batnas you are willing to execute provides you with a tremendous amount of power during the negotiations. You want to find the graceful way to ensure the other side knows you have Batnas and will execute them if needed. Start to let the other side know you have Batnas during the exchange stage, although not necessarily what they are. In bargaining stage, you will decide if and when to reveal your Batnas. If you're having trouble learning and assessing your counterparts Batna, this may indicate you that you need to build more trust before probing further. Batnas can be used as an advisory or a threat. Threats damage relationships. Advisories, on the other hand, strengthen them. Misreading the strengths of your counterpart's partner can result in impasse after extensive time has already been invested in the bargaining process. Ideal time to execute Batnas are if you have fairly assessed the parties' Batnas, both sides, yours and theirs. You might choose to execute your Batna before entering the bargaining stage. You certainly don't want to spend time in bargaining only to target the conclude stage and have to execute your Batna. Misreading the strength of your other party's Batna can cause a waste of time. If you have all the power in a negotiation, it's wise not to talk about your Batna. When parties with power flaunt in their Batna, the less powerful counterpart builds an offensive. Renegotiation discussions almost always involve a battle of Batnas, and a Batna that you aren't willing or able to execute is called a bluff. When you are determining the Batna, develop a list of actions you might possibly take if no agreement is reached, improve some of the more promising ideas and convert them into practical options, and select tentatively the one option that seems best. When creating a Batna, a negotiator should brainstorm a list of all available alternatives that might be considered should the negotiation fail to render a favorable agreement. Choose the most promising alternatives, selecting the one as seen as the best, and expand them into practical and attainable alternatives. Identify the best of the alternatives and keep it in reserve as a fallback during the negotiation. Although it might be impractical to start a negotiation with a predetermined decision not to find an agreement, a viable Batna acts as an essential insurance policy. A well-conceived and clearly defined Batna gives a skilled negotiator the advantage to break off the negotiation if it becomes clear that a beneficial outcome is impossible. The negotiator would then know the consequences should the negotiation fail. The willingness of a negotiator to break off a negotiation allows him or her to adopt a more firm and forceful stance when proposing ideas and interests as the basis for an agreement. If a negotiator has a strong Batna, it may be beneficial to disclose it, as it would prevent the other party or the parties from acting as if a viable alternative didn't exist. However, if a negotiator has a weak Batna, it would be better not to disclose it at first, especially if the other party indicates they are overestimating their own Batna, as this would prove to be a bonus that should not be given as a disclosure. A negotiator who knows more about the alternatives available to the other party will be more able to prepare a negotiation. Should a negotiation learn that the other party is overestimating its Batna before the start of a negotiation, then they will be able to effectively use this information to lower the negotiation expectations of the other party. In situations where both parties possess a similar or superior Batna, then given similar negotiation skills, negotiation would seem rather fruitless because there would be very little incentive to reach an agreement. In such a scenario, both parties would be better off to seek elsewhere to pursue their business. When a negotiator fails to explore its Batna, they will find themselves in a very shaky situation. They will be exposed to strong internal pressure to make an agreement, as they will be unaware of what would happen if the negotiation failed. They will be over-optimistic about proposed agreements, which can then result in the associated costs not being fully appreciated. They will face the peril of becoming committed to reach an agreement, as they will be unaware of the alternatives outside the negotiation. This will foster pessimism about their prospects if the negotiation fails, and they will become beholden to the whims of the law of agreement, which holds that when persons agree to something, it's entirely dependent on the attractiveness of the available alternatives. Let's elaborate on Batna with an example. So in this example, A needs a car, and he or she is negotiating with B to purchase the car. B offers to sell the car to A for $10,000. A looks to online classified sites and finds a similar car, to which the value assigned is $7,500. A's Batna is $500. If B doesn't offer a price lower than $7,500, A will consider his best alternative to a negotiated agreement. A is willing to pay up to $7,500 for the car, but would ideally want to pay $5,000 only. If B demands a price higher than $7,500, A will take the business somewhere else. So this is the buyer's alternatives. The relative figures are shown here, as we see the buyer's settlement agreement from $5,000 to $7,500, as in the classified sites a similar car was found at that price. And from the seller's side, he just offered a price of $10,000, and then the seller's settlement range is from $10,000 onwards. When we look at the second slide, if B sells his car to someone else for $8,000, then $8,000 is B's Batna. In such a scenario, an agreement will not be made, as B is only willing to sell for a minimum of $8,000, while A is only willing to purchase at a maximum of $7,500. Having a best alternative to a negotiated agreement before entering into a negotiation is important. If A had not had a Batna, B would have had more bargaining power of Batna, more than $7,500. Knowing A's Batna is at $7,500, the highest price that B would be able to sell his car for is $7,500. So in the next chapter, we will be going over the cycles and the skills needed for negotiation. Thank you for your participation.